When you can't make it to City Hall or the school board meetings, local journalists from Duluth News Tribune will be there to report the facts and get your questions answered. Local news works for you. Stay up to date at duluthnewstribune.com.
Hello, Northlanders. It's Tuesday, September 19th. I'm Wyatt Buckner, the Duluth News Tribune Minute, presented by Minnesota Power Employees Credit Union.
The average MPECU member saves over $785 a year in better rates and lower fees. And with MPECU, every ATM is your ATM. With their free checking program, you get ATM fee reimbursements at any ATM anywhere in the U.S. Check out Minnesota Power Employees Credit Union's services online at mpecu.com or visit their offices in downtown Duluth, Arrowhead Road, or Miller Trunk Highway.
Now here's a look at today's headlines. The Duluth Police Department released a timeline of an incident that occurred between two women and two men at the Rustic Bar on September 12th. A 39-year-old woman with injuries to her face and head was transported to a local hospital by ambulance around 12:15 a.m. September 13th from the 500 block of North 60th Avenue West, police said. Officers requested surveillance video from the Rustic Bar owner on Thursday and received it on Saturday. The video allegedly shows two women in a conversation which turned physical. Two men became involved in the confrontation and assaulted the victim, police said. The two men were known to the other woman involved, according to the police report. Investigators spoke to additional witnesses on September 18th and canvassed the area to gather video from surrounding establishments. The fight is still being investigated and no one has been charged. Police did not identify any of the people involved. Anyone with information or video is encouraged to call the Violent Crimes Unit at 218-730-5050. A Minnesota law creating criminal penalties for spreading misinformation about voting is the latest new election law facing a legal challenge from a conservative-aligned group. In a lawsuit filed this month in Minnesota U.S. District Court, the Minnesota Voters Alliance and plaintiffs, including a former Republican legislative candidate and GOP activist, are challenging the constitutionality of the misinformation law on First Amendment grounds. They claim that they could potentially face prosecution for making claims about another new law, one that restores voting rights to felons on probation in Minnesota, something they're also suing to overturn. The group argues in their complaint filed September 11th that the law could give people cause to fear prosecution. Under the new law passed by the Democratic Farmer Labor Control Legislature this spring, spreading false information about voting 60 days before an election is a gross misdemeanor. The law applies to information surrounding the time, place, and manner of holding an election, qualifications and restrictions on voter eligibility, and threats to physical safety associated with casting a ballot. Anyone found guilty of knowingly spreading false information with the intent of preventing a person from voting could face up to a year in jail and a fine of up to $3,000. Dan Williamson now joins us with a special guest.
Thanks, Wyatt. I'm joined by one of our colleagues, Duluth News Tribune arts and entertainment reporter Jay Gabler. And Jay has a story he's working on for Wednesday's print edition of the Duluth News Tribune. It's also a story you can find on our website prior at duluthnewstribune.com. And Jay, this is a story about a local singer-songwriter that has a new album coming out.
Yes, Rachel Kilgore is a name that is doubtless familiar to many Duluthians. She is essentially a lifelong Duluthian, although she's spent time in Boston and elsewhere. She has been living in Duluth recently and is releasing her fourth LP. It's called My Father Loved Me.
Did she talk at all about inspiration? What went into the process for creating this new album?
Yes, we got to talk a lot about her inspiration for this new album, and it is fascinating. I mean, the title of the album is My Father Loved Me, and it is an album about her late father, who died several years ago after experiencing dementia, and she has been spending the last handful of years writing these songs about her father, but not just sort of sentimental songs about how great he was, because he, clearly was great, a wonderful, guy who, is very loving and she remembers very fondly, but she dives deep into his life and into their relationship. She has songs about his relationship with his home country, his original home country of Canada, about his relationship with her and other members of their family, about his relationship with himself. So it gets into themes of, for example, masculinity and how, those of us men aren't always encouraged to be expressive and open about our emotions and what that means to people who might be in our family, trying to connect with us and watching us trying to connect with ourselves. So yeah, it's a pretty deep, heavy, but absolutely beautiful and heartfelt and very intelligent set of songs.
Two-part question here, takeaways. First off, what was your takeaway? And second off, what do you hope our audience takes away from this story?
So I'd never actually met Rachel Kilgore. So that was a great honor for me to be able to sit down with her and have a conversation about her life and about this new music. She is an extremely well-respected, acclaimed singer-songwriter known throughout Minnesota and far beyond. So it was a real privilege to get to meet her and learn about her process and about these songs in particular. And, no surprise, she's absolutely just wonderful and very thoughtful and very, open and talking about these really, in some ways very personal and sometimes, painful, challenging topics. In terms of what our listeners take away, I hope that features like this encourage readers to have another think about the music that they're listening to and what it means to be listening to these songs that come from a particular artist and are influenced by that artist's life, but that this artist has chosen to share with you. So if they listen to this album, and I hope they do, it's a great album, they'll hear songs about Rachel Kilgore's father and all about their relationship and about his life and what have you. And, these were not easy songs necessarily for her to write, but this is an important part of the sort of grieving process for her, a way that she connects with her father and with her family. So they're very personal songs for her, but an artist like this puts these songs out into the world, not just for, herself, but for listeners as well. Because, when you are an artist and you sing these songs, you perform these songs live or put them out into the world via videos or recordings, or what have you, you hear fans say to you, oh, this resonates with my experience. This resonates with my life. And just that whole fascinating loop that happens in this interaction between you and this artist. Glenn Gould, the classical pianist, called it a 1-to-0 relationship. Where you're listening to a record where you've got your relationship to the music, the artist has their relationship to the music, and there's this record between you. There's a whole process. Absolutely fascinating to think about, and I really appreciated how thoughtful and open Rachel Kilgore was in describing the process to me. And I would be remiss to mention, if you want to hear the songs not 1-to-0 via recording, but 1 to, several dozen, hearing them performed live, she has a record release show coming up this Friday, September 22nd at the Zeitgeist Teatro in Duluth.
Very cool. Great stuff there, Jay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Dan.
And again, you can find Jay's article in Wednesday's print edition of the Duluth News Tribune, as well as online prior at duluthnewstribune.com. Wyatt, back to you.
Thanks, Dan. Now here's a look at your forecast, brought to the News Tribune's Northlandia podcast.
Good morning, Storm Tracker meteorologist John Wheeler here. A partly sunny day today and breezy with an east wind around 10 to 20 miles an hour. That wind direction will keep the Duluth Harbor area pretty cool in the 60s. Outlying areas will likely warm up into the 70s today. Becoming mostly cloudy and rather mild tonight with a low generally in the middle 50s. Wednesday, partly sunny and a bit warmer with temperatures in the mid-70s in Duluth. Some areas in Wisconsin may reach into the 80s. Later in the week, especially over the weekend proper, chance of showers and thunderstorms builds into the forecast. I'm Storm Tracker meteorologist John Wheeler.
Thank you to the Northlandia podcast for their support. The weekly podcast explores curious and unique stories here in the Northland. The latest episode looks into the Mesabi Iron Range's last standing headframe and the efforts to preserve it. You can find all the episodes of Northlandia on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get this podcast. Reporting for today's episode was done by Terry Caddo, Alex DeRozier, and Jay Gabler. Thank you for listening to the Duluth News Tribune Minute. Have a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.